All right, so today we are diving deep into Proxmox Backup Server.
Yeah, let's get into it.
We're going to really get into the nitty-gritty. We've got their official data sheet pulled up here so we can really break this thing down.
Our treasure map to understanding exactly what Proxmox Backup Server is bringing to the table.
Totally, and right off the bat, I'm struck by how they're presenting themselves.
What do you mean?
Oh, they're calling it an enterprise backup solution.
Okay.
But then right away, they're like VMs, containers, physical hosts. It's like they want everyone to use this thing.
You know, I think there's a very deliberate strategy behind that. I mean, think about it. More and more businesses, they're relying on these virtual environments.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Right. Traditional backup solutions, a lot of times they just weren't built to handle that.
It's a whole other ballgame.
Yeah. Exactly. So Proxmox is really stepping into this gap. If your business lives and dies by your virtual machines, you want a backup solution that understands how to protect that.
Makes sense. They're specializing.
Precisely.
And speaking of specialize, they use some pretty bold language in this data sheet.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Lightning fast and storage efficient. They're not messing around.
Who doesn't love a fast backup that doesn't eat up all your storage space?
Exactly. But what's the magic behind these claims?
Well, it's not just marketing hype. There's some really smart tech at play here.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
So one of the key things is incremental backups.
Okay, break that down for me.
So instead of backing up your entire system every single time, which takes forever, it only grabs the changes made since the last backup. Imagine like taking snapshots of your data at different points in time. You're not wasting space on redundant information, and that's going to make the entire process so much faster, so much more efficient.
So you're only backing up the stuff that's actually changed.
Exactly.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. They also mentioned deduplication.
Right.
Is that just a fancy way of saying they're good at finding and getting rid of duplicate files?
It's more than that. They actually have a really smart system that identifies identical blocks of data and only stores them once.
Oh, wow.
So imagine, you know, a
Yeah.
super efficient filing system where everything has its place and nothing is duplicated unnecessarily.
Okay.
That's where their .pxar format comes in. It's their own file archive format. And it's specifically designed for a high level of deduplication.
That's pretty cool. Yeah. So less strain on your network,
For sure.
faster restores when you need them,
Yeah.
and potentially lower costs because you're using less storage.
Exactly.
They really seem to have thought about the efficiency piece.
They've cracked the code.
But what about security?
Yeah.
What are they doing to keep our data safe?
Well, security is clearly a top priority for Proxmox.
Right.
And one of the first things that jumped out at me was their emphasis on client-side encryption.
Okay, now we're talking. But for those who aren't encryption gurus, what does that even mean?
So it's not just that your data is encrypted.
Right.
It's encrypted before it even leaves your system. So imagine your data is scrambled into this unreadable format the second you hit that backup button.
Interesting.
Even if someone intercepts your data, all they're going to get is gibberish. They don't have the key.
So it's like putting your data in a lockbox before it even leaves the house.
Exactly.
I like that.
And then on top of that, they have this master key and a paper key option. It's like they took security to another level.
A paper key, was this 1985?
Right. It might seem a little old school, but think about it.
Yeah.
Having a physical copy of your encryption keys stored offline, like that's huge peace of mind.
That's true. So even if there's some kind of digital meltdown, you've got a backup plan.
Precisely.
I can see why they made that decision.
Yeah.
But let's talk about a more specific threat here.
What's that?
Ransomware. It's everywhere these days. So how does Proxmox backup servers stack up against that?
So they've got a multi-layered approach to ransomware protection. Remember those immutable backups we talked about?
Yeah.
That's the first line of defense. See, ransomware typically tries to encrypt your data, hold it hostage.
Right.
But with these immutable backups, they can't touch that backed up data. It's frozen in time. Even the worst ransomware can't mess with it.
So you can basically rewind to a point before the attack.
Exactly.
Oh, that's nice. But ransomware isn't just about encrypting data, right?
You got it.
It can spread through your whole system.
Absolutely.
What's stopping it from doing that?
Well, that's where granular access control comes in.
Oh.
Proxmox lets you control who has access to what down to a really, really granular level. It's like having security checkpoints throughout your data center. No unauthorized entry.
It's like they built a fortress around your data.
Precisely. They've really prioritized security at every single level, from that initial encryption all the way to how they're handling access and protecting against things like ransomware.
They're thinking ahead.
For sure.
And speaking of thinking ahead and integrating things, one thing that caught my eye was this whole Proxmox VE integration.
Yeah.
Is this where things get really interesting for users who are already using Proxmox?
It really is, especially if you're already in the Proxmox ecosystem. This integration is like a game changer.
So we're talking like super smooth backups, everything just works.
Exactly. Seamless. And it gets even better. They've got this live restore capability.
So I could spin up a virtual machine from the backup, start using it even while it's still restoring the background.
You got it. No more downtime. Just get back up and running as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Wow. They really thought of everything to minimize disruption.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we've got speed, we've got security, but what about redundancy?
Right. Got to have that backup to the backup.
Exactly. I saw they mentioned remote synchronization in the data sheet. What's the deal with that?
Basically, it's like an insurance policy for your backups.
Okay, I like it.
So you can replicate your backups to another location, could be a completely different data center, geographically distant, just in case something crazy happens to your primary backup location.
Natural disaster, whatever.
Exactly. You're covered.
Smart. So seems like they've covered a lot of bases here, but I do have one question.
Shoot.
What about people who, they like to get their hands dirty, they prefer the command line? Can Proxmox handle that?
Oh, absolutely. They've got you covered. Full-featured command line interface, CLI.
Nice.
And it's got intelligent tab completion, so navigating those commands is a breeze.
That's key. I hate having to look up every single command.
Right. And then for the automation folks out there, they have a very robust REST API.
Of course. Got to have that API.
Well documented, ready to integrate into your workflows, whatever you need.
Very cool. But let's not forget about the everyday user.
Right, the ones who aren't living in the command line.
Exactly. They mentioned a web-based management interface. Tell me about that.
So they've really put a lot of effort into making this web interface intuitive, easy to use.
Okay, that's always good.
It's available in multiple languages.
Oh, wow. So it's ready for global teams.
Exactly. And they haven't skimped on features either.
Like what?
You can manage your data stores, organize them into namespaces, browse backups, restore them, monitor performance, check your usage stats. It's all there.
So it's a full-fledged management hub.
Exactly.
That's impressive. But how secure is this web interface?
Oh, it's locked down tight. They're using ACME protocol for their TLS certificates, secure connections all the way.
Music to my ears.
And they even have two-factor authentication for logins. Extra layer of protection.
Good, good. Got to have that two-factor authentication these days.
Absolutely.
Okay, now let's talk notifications.
Okay.
Because this is something that I feel like often gets overlooked.
Right.
I've missed so many important alerts just because they got buried in my inbox,
I've been there.
So how does Proxmox handle this whole notification game?
So they understand notification overload is a real thing. So they've built a really flexible system. You can customize how you get those alerts, where they go, all that.
So it's not just email.
No, they have integrations with platforms like Godify.
Okay, and what is that?
It's an open source notification system. Think of it like a dedicated messaging platform just for your important alerts.
So instead of getting lost in my inbox, I can have them sent straight to like a dedicated app.
Exactly.
That's awesome. I love that they give you options instead of just saying, here's one way, deal with it.
Right. Flexibility is key, and that goes for their deployment options too.
Oh, how so?
They've got your traditional installation methods, but then they've also got these automated, unattended installations.
So you can just set it and forget it.
Pretty much. Get Proxmox backup server up and running on your bare metal servers quickly. No need to babysit the process.
That's fantastic. I mean, it sounds like they've truly thought of everything.
They really have.
But, we've been talking a lot about the technical details here.
Yeah.
Let's zoom out for a second. Big picture.
Okay.
We talked about Proxmox being open source, but then also having these enterprise support options. What does that actually mean for someone listening? Why should they care about that balance?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because on one hand, you've got this open source approach, which is great.
Transparency.
Exactly. You can see how it works.
You can even contribute to it if you want to.
Exactly. You don't get that with, proprietary software.
No way.
It's like having the blueprint to your house,
I like that. You can tinker, you can modify, you can really make it your own.
Yeah.
But for some businesses, I imagine, especially bigger ones, the idea of trusting their backups to open source software might seem, a little risky.
Yeah. There's a bit of maybe a perception thing there.
Right.
But that's where this dual approach from Proxmox is so smart.
Yeah.
They get it, They haven't just dumped some open source code and said, good luck.
Figure it out.
Right. They have their enterprise support agreement.
which is huge.
Huge. So you need that extra level of assurance. You want direct access to their engineers, priority support. It's there.
It's the best of both worlds.
It really is.
You get that open source, transparency, cost effectiveness.
Right.
But then if you need that safety net, it's there.
It's there.
Okay, so zooming out even further.
Yeah.
What does the rise of something like Proxmox backup server tell us about the future of data protection in general?
That's a great question. I think we're seeing a real shift towards democratizing this enterprise-grade technology.
Explain that.
So these powerful tools, they used to be only for the big guys, the ones with tons of money.
Right, the huge corporations.
Exactly. But now, open source, flexible support, it's like leveling the playing field. Smaller companies, they can access these amazing tools too.
And it's not just about access, it's about affordability too.
Absolutely. Open source often means lower costs.
Which is huge.
Huge, especially in today's economy.
It's an exciting time to be in tech, I'll say that much.
It is. Things are changing so fast.
At Proxmox backup server, I think it really represents that shift,
100%.
towards these more agile solutions, more cost-effective.
And more transparent, which I think is really important.
Totally, totally. Well, on that note, I think we've covered a lot of ground here with Proxmox backup server.
We really dug deep.
We did. Big thanks to you. This has been super informative.
It's been my pleasure. Always happy to geek out about backups.
And to everyone listening, remember, a little backup goes a long way.
Ah.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.